Welcome back sa ating channel. Naging mainit nga no sa hindi umano sa mundo ng social media. Talagang hindi na nga nakatiis si Kong Rodante Marcoleta at sinampahan na nga na ng kaso itong mga taga-China na ito. Dito nga natin makikita mga kaibigan na talagang hindi nga takot itong si Kong Rodante Marcoleta na harapin ang mga batikos at talagang sinampahan ng kaso ang mga taga-China na ito dahil sobra na ang ginagawa nila at pagmamaltrato sa bansang Pilipinas. Lalong-lalo na sa ating mga kababayan na talagang nadadali ang kanilang hanap buhay at kanilang pamilya. Dito nga natin makikita na dahil nga dito ay nainis nga si Kong Rodante Marcoleta dahil nagiging bingi, pepe ang kuting ng norte na ito at hindi niya na inaasikaso ang taong bayan, lalong-lalo na ang naghihirap na talagang nadadamay ang mga kabuhayan ng ating mga kababayang Pinoy dahil nga sa China na ito. Dahil kung matatandaan natin mga kaibigan, hinahayaan nga ni kuting ng norte na ito na masakop ang mga ibang lupay na sa bansang Pilipinas sa kanyang pamumuno. Kaya naman banat ng maraming netizen na tila walang bayag ang ating Pangulo. Ngunit ano nga ba talaga ang tunay na plano ni President Kütïng ng Norte? Dito natin makikita mga kaibigan na maraming dismayado na ating mga kababayan dahil nga sa kanyang ginagawa na hindi na nakikialam sa problema ng bansang Pilipinas. Kaya naman ang malaking katanungan ng maraming netizen, ano ba talaga ang plano mo? Bakit ka pa tumakbo kung hindi mo rin naman pala kaya na asikasuhin ang problema ng bansang Pilipinas? Buti na lang meron si Kong Rodante Marcoleta na talagang sinasampahan nga ng kaso ang mga tiga-China na ito. War kung war, ito ang dapat gawin. Well mga kaibigan, para nga sa karagdagang impormasyon, panoorin nga natin ang buong video. At kung bago ka pa lamang sa aking channel, huwag kalimutan i-click ang subscribe button at notification bell para lagi kang updated sa ating mga bagong video. At para sa sulit viewers natin dyan, maraming salamat sa walang sawang pagsuporta.
2012, the relations between the Philippines and China, which spanned centuries, have been remarkably cordial and warm. As a matter of fact, this catapulted into the establishment of a diplomatic relations between the two countries in 1975. But since 2012, these relationships, Mr. Speaker, has been characterized by territorial and maritime disputes in the South China Sea, starting from the naval standoff in the Scarborough Shoal. In that same year, Mr. Speaker, the Philippine Navy had almost a shooting war with the Chinese Navy when it rescued the Chinese poachers, which were earlier accosted by the Philippine Navy while patrolling that vicinity. Mr. Speaker, since then, after those maritime incidents, the bilateral ties between the two countries took a downturn, heightened by the Philippine filing of an arbitral case against China. We know that the Permanent Court of Arbitration declared that the 9-dash line drawn by China over the South China Sea was not based on the historic rights that it claims, that it is not on the basis of the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. Mr. Speaker, conscious of all these turbulent times, a small group of party list representatives was invited to visit Hubei Province, Beijing, and Shanghai. I was part of that delegation, Mr. Speaker. That visit was good and memorable. We were toured in the Three Gorges Dam, a hydroelectric facility that supplies almost one-half of mainland China. We saw the mountain tea plantation in Hubei province. We were awed by the Great Wall and the technology of Huawei. And then we were met by the chairman of the International Committee of the Communist Party of China. I can still vividly remember his opening statement. In a very firm and calculated voice, he said to us, "Your most distant relative is no better than your closest friend." But, Mr. Speaker, exactly 1 year after that visit, in July 2019, a Chinese vessel hit and sank a Filipino boat anchored in Recto Bank. Had it not for the timely assistance of the Vietnamese fishermen, our own fishermen would have drowned without a trace. And then earlier this year, Mr. Speaker, on February 6, 2023, the Chinese militia beamed a military-grade laser light twice on the resupply mission to supply the provisions of our personnel in the BRP anchored at Ayungin Shoal. It was repeated, Mr. Speaker, some 2 weeks ago, or on August 6 this year, when the Chinese Coast Guard hosted down, again, a resupply mission to the same people manning and guarding the BRP Sierra Madre. What would have happened, Mr. Speaker, if, for example, those water cannons hit a Philippine Navy ship who was also assisting those small boats trying to provide provisions? It could have been a different story. Our AFP Chief of Staff said that if it did happen, Mr. Speaker, that would have been an aggressive action that could have been interpreted as an act of war. Mr. Speaker, how much more humiliating actions will China do to malign and besmirch the reputation of a sovereign nation like the Philippines? How much more of this can we take before diplomacy becomes meaningless and irrelevant? How come China, Mr. Speaker, its action betray it's about commitment to friendship and peaceful coexistence? While we know that the arbitral award did not entirely invalidate China's claims in its possession over the disputed isles in the Spratlys, Mr. Speaker, I think China should respect the traditional fishing rights of our fishermen. Traditional fishing rights is a concept. It is a peremptory norm. It is a customary part of international law, invoked by international arbitral and adjudication tribunals. China knows about the 1974 jurisdictional fisheries cases. These are two cases. The first case is between Iceland and the United Kingdom. The other one, again, is between Iceland and the Federal Republic of Germany. In both cases, Mr. Speaker, the court ruled that traditional fishing rights must be talked about. While Iceland has preferential rights, these rights cannot exclude the traditional fishing rights of Germany and United Kingdom. China knows about the 1988 arbitral decision between Eritrea and Yemen, where the court ruled in that case, Mr. Speaker, that sovereignty is not inimical, but entails perpetuation of traditional fishing rights in the region. And of course, the arbitral award of 2016. In the arbitral award, it said that the Scarborough Shoal is a traditional fishing ground. The Permanent Court of Arbitration in The Hague ruled that China and the Philippines traditionally fish and traditional dispatch vessels in that area. That should have been the case, Mr. Speaker. Article 123 of the UNCLOS should have been the basis of our peaceful coexistence. Article 123 of the UNCLOS, Mr. Speaker, describes the South China Sea as a semi-enclosed body of water. What is the significance of that? In a semi-enclosed body of water, Mr. Speaker, all the coastal states must cooperate, must coordinate in the utilization, exploitation, exploration, development, and conservation of the living and non-living resources. Mr. Speaker, when the chairman of the International Committee met with us, and he lectured us on the better nearby friend than a distant relative, I had the occasion to reply to him. I said, Mr. Chairman, that proverb that you said, that our distant relative is no better than your closest friend, my country and our people also subscribe to that proverb. But more than that, Mr. Chair, I said to him, there is another adage that is probably more relevant and applicable between our country and yours. That strong fences make good neighbors. I told him that night before he met with us, I saw a giant billboard standing nearby the Tiananmen Square. And that particular billboard, Mr. Speaker, was flashing and blinking many words like friendship, fellowship, cooperation, camaraderie, prosperity, respect, humanity, amity. I told him, Mr. Chair, if we can use these words as good materials in building a lasting and strong fence between our countries, in order for us to secure a lasting relationship into the future. Mr. Speaker, I hope that the Chinese Coast Guard is listening. I hope further that they should replicate the giant billboard standing in the Tiananmen Square, that they should construct the same billboard in the South China Sea, to remind them that friendship is not all words, but more so in deeds. And I also hope that the ambassador of China is listening, so that he could also refresh the memory of his colleague back in Beijing, that he met with us on that fateful day in June 2018. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Aksyon. Number one is yung pinapaimbestigahan na yung insidente. After investigation, ang plano ng gobyerno natin, mag-file tayo ng kaso versus China in an international court para panagutin sila sa ganong ginawa nila, yung sinadyang banggain yung ating bangka. Yan ang nakikita kong mangyayari. Ako, natutuwa ako sa ganyang move dahil to me, yan po ang nararapat. Mahinahon lang muna tayo. Okay? So, another one, sa legal front, ang ating Philippine government, nag-announce na po ang Justice Secretary na magfa-file din tayo ng environmental case against China, yung sinira nila yung mga coral reefs sa territorial waters natin sa West Philippine Sea. Ano yan? Documented na yan. Nagpunta na doon ang mga scientists, civilian scientists, at inassess yung damage. So yung resulta ng yung assessment na ginawa ng mga expert, yun na po yung basihan natin mag-file ng kaso in an international tribunal. Hindi pa nabanggit kung alin dyan, but there are many tribunals. So dalawa, environmental case at saka yung ramming incident. Lahat yan magsasampa tayo ng legal na kaso. Aside pa yung diplomatic protest, yan na yung usual. Palagi natin ginagawa. Diplomatic protest tayo. Kaya nga pinatawag ng ating Philippine government ang Chinese ambassador to the Philippines. But then, expected na yan, mga maro sila eh. Sabi nila, wala daw ang Chinese ambassador. Nagpunta sa ibang lugar. At ang pinatin lang parang deputy lang ano. Okay. So, yun po, diplomatic and legal front. At least may ginagawa tayo. We are not sitting down. Okay. Kagaya ng ginawa ng Pinoy administration na dinala yung kaso sa Permanent Court of Arbitration at nanalo nga tayo. Nag-rule ang korte nga atin talaga yun, territorial waters natin yun, at in-invalidate yung claim ng China na kanila lahat yun, yung 9-dash line na sinasabi nila. Ngayon, dinagdagan nila, naging 10-dash line. Pinalawak pa nila ang kanilang nasasakupan, 10-dash line na eh, para maangkin na nila ang buong South China Sea or West Philippine Sea sa atin. Okay. So, another arena. Dito ko nagustuhan yung action ng ating Philippine government. Sa trade aspect naman, yung official development assistance ng China, parang may strings attached palagi. Pinapautangan tayo, magbigay sila ng loan, kailan may kaakibat na strings attached. Hindi ko na ma-detalye yung strings attached, no? Ito yung nakita kong style ng China eh. Nagpapautang siya sa iba't ibang bansa. Tinawag yan na Belt Road Initiative. Para bang ipinapakita nila yung soft power nila na kaya nilang magpautang, but at the same time, they are nag-i-impose sila certain degree of control sa mga bansa na pinapautangan. Okay? So, ito ngayon, desisyon ng ating gobyerno. Nag-announce na ang Department of Finance na hindi na natin itutuloy yung loan. May 83 billion pesos loan natin sa China. ODA ang tawag nila, Official Development Assistance ng China, 83 billion to finance yung phase 1 ng Mindanao Railway Project. Nasimulan yan panahon ni Tatay Digong. yung arrangement, kailang umalis na lang si Tatay Digong, wala pa rin yung loan na yan. Hanggang agreement pa lang. So ngayon, PBBM admin, tinuloy pa rin, kailang itong nangyayaring bullying na sa ng China against sa atin, ito, nakapag-decide na ang Philippine government, i-cancel yung loan, hindi na itutuloy. May isa pang project, yung Philippine National Railways project sa Bicol, another multi-billion peso loan from China, hindi na rin itutuloy. Okay? So, bakit hindi na natin itutuloy? Na to me, lalo na ako, taga Mindanao, ang ganda sana na merong railway. Kasi yung railway project na yan, iikot sa buong Mindanao, madali nang magbiyahe. So, ang ganda kung matuloy, kailang ganito, ang laki pala ng interest. Kakainin o ginigisa tayo sa sariling mantika dahil sa napakalaking interest. So, noong una, okay pa, sige, ituloy natin. Ngayon, with this bullying activities ng China sa West Philippine Sea, nakita ko, it has come to a point na panahon na para unti-unti kumalas ang Philippine government sa control ng China sa atin in terms of itong mga pautang kunuhay. Na laki ng loan, but at the same time, gusto nilang i-control ang ating economy. So, to me, kahit yung project tuloy pa rin. Maghanap lang ang gobyerno ng other funding sources. Okay? Other funding sources para matuloy. But definitely, nag-inform na po ang Department of Finance, Chinese Ambassador, na hindi na natin itutuloy yung dalawang project, yung Mindanao Railway Project and Philippine National Railways Bicol Project. Wala na. Cut off na yun. So, okay na. Sa ngayon, naghanap ang ating gobyerno ng lender o magpapautang para matuloy ang project. Okay, balik tayo doon sa maritime front. Aside sa pag-file ng kaso, iniimbestigahan na yung ramming incident, then mag-file tayo ng kaso sa International Court. Ito pang maganda. Magkakaroon na later on ng joint patrols with our allies para maiwasan yung ganun. They are now on the planning stage. Kasi nagpahayag na ng suporta sa atin ng US. Nagkinondem nila yung ramming incident US, Australia. Itong dalawang bansang ito, meron tayong defense treaty. Okay? VFA, o Visiting Forces Agreement, gano'n. And then, pangatlo, bansa na nag-support sa atin, Japan. Maraming binigay sa atin ng Japan ng mga vessels, Coast Guard vessels. Ano pa? European Union. Ayan. So, kahit inaapi tayo sa actual ground doon sa sea waters ng Ayungin Shoal, nananalo po tayo sa international opinion. Kasi lumalabas talaga ang ganda yung ginagawa ng Coast Guard na every resupply mission may media na dinadala, at yung footages ng media natin, local media natin, na i-broadcast, pinipick up ng international media. Kaya nakikita yung gaano kabuli yung China. Ilan ba yung kanilang Coast Guard vessel? 110 meters long. Parang 4 na basketballan ang kataas. Ang haba. Ang atin, wooden boat lang yung resupply. Binangga nila. Something like that. O di, anong mukha natin sa international arena? Tayo po yung inaapi at ang nang-aapi ang China. And with that, yon, dami ng support. Kaya, konting tiis lang muna tayo. Pasensyahan lang. But, time will come, I believe. Next year, hopefully, na magkakaroon ng regular joint patrol Nandyan either Australian Navy, nandyan Philippine Navy, of course, nandyan ang US Navy, Japanese Navy, European Union, France. Marami nang interesado kasi itong mga other countries, ang kanilang interest yung freedom of navigation operations. Inaangkin ng China yung sea waters na yan. Yan ang international route. Sabi ng Australia, Japan, that's international waters. We are free to pass the international waters. Yon. Later on, sasamahan tayo nitong mga allied navies. So, hindi na lang Coast Guard at civilian vessels ang mag-resupply, kundi with Navy na sa darating na panahon. Hintay lang natin. At saka yung BRP Sierra Madre, nag-decide na po ang ating gobyerno, aayusin yun. Kasi pag hindi repair, it will disintegrate. Pag nag-disintegrate, yung nasiran talaga yung ship natin doon, yung Sierra Madre, nako, aagawin na yan ng China at papatayuan na naman ng military facility kagaya ng ginawa nila doon sa Recto Reef and Panganiban Reef. Atin man yun. Kailang naagaw na ng China at pinatayuan na ng military facility. So, ang ating gobyerno, we're doing our best na hindi na maagaw ng China yung ating Ayungin Shoal. So, congratulations to the Philippine government for, to me, napakagandang response nila sa pambubuli ng China.
Dito nga natin makikita mga kaibigan kung gaano nga ba talaga katapang si Kong Rodante Marcoleta na harapin ang problema ng bansang Pilipinas. Iilan lamang sila na talagang matitino ang pag-iisip na talagang ipagtanggol ang taong bayan para sa kanilang tungkulin at talagang hindi nga pangungulimbat ng pera ang kanilang ginagawa. Hindi gaya ng nasa loob mismo ng Malacanang, mga opisyalis na korap na talagang hinahayaan lang nila dahil malaki rin naman ang kanilang kinikita. Well mga kaibigan, kung kayo ang tatanungin ano ang inyong mga opinyon, just comment below sa ating comment section at ating pag-uusapan.